My son's wife said I was too embarrassing for her friends, so I canceled her bridal shower. Do not show up. You look absolutely embarrassing. Harper Sloane screamed those words at me the moment I stepped out of my kitchen, holding a tray of warm oatmeal cookies. I had baked them out of habit, the same way I used to bake for Lucas when he came home from school, believing that maybe the scent of cinnamon and butter could make any space feel safer. But that morning, nothing felt safe anymore. Harper's voice cut through the air like a sharp blade, slicing into the quiet of my home, a home that had never heard shouting until she walked into it. She narrowed her eyes at me, lips twisting as if my very existence offended her. "If you show your face at my bridal shower," she snapped, "I swear I will be humiliated in front of the whole town." Her friend let out a sharp, mocking laugh, and the two shared a look that made me feel small in my own hallway. I stood there with my tray, my hands trembling not from age, but from the shock of being spoken to with such venom. For a moment I wondered if I had misheard, but the cold gleam in Harper's eyes told me she meant every word. 30 years in this house, and no one had ever shouted at me, mocked me, or tried to belittle me like that. I tried to steady my breath, to hold on to dignity. But her cruelty cut deeper than I expected. This was not stress. This was superiority. Disgust. A desire to erase me from her perfect picture. I looked at Lucas. He said nothing. He would not even meet my eyes. And that silence hurt worse than anything Harper could have said. "Seriously, Sarah," she said, using my first name like I was a stranger. "Do you ever look at yourself before leaving your room? People will think Lucas dragged some charity project into his wedding photos." Her friend laughed again, and the sound echoed down the hallway like an insult smeared across the walls. I felt the warmth of the cookie tray leaking into my forearms as I held it too tight, like a lifeline. About 250 words had passed since she first spit her anger at me, and I could feel the pressure inside me building, the kind of pressure that whispers a warning before a heart cracks. I closed my eyes for a second, just long enough to breathe, then opened them again to face the cruelty standing in front of me. And if anyone listening to my story feels that justice deserves celebration, smash that hype button. Let us keep stories like this alive, echoing far, far away. Your support helps us bring understanding and love to those who deserve it. Thank you so much. Keep listening. Harper crossed her arms, tapping her heel against my wooden floor as though she owned the place. "Honestly, I am trying to build something elegant and classy," she said. "And having you there ruins the atmosphere. You do not match us. You never will." Her words pressed against my chest, cold and deliberate. I looked at Lucas again, hoping for some sign of support, but he still stood silent, staring somewhere near the floorboards as if the grain of the wood mattered more than the woman who raised him. My lips trembled before I managed to steady them. "This is still my home," I said softly. Harper rolled her eyes. "And it still smells like old lady furniture and cheap candles." Her friend snorted, trying to hide her laughter behind her hand. For a moment, I felt something in me flicker the echo of who I used to be. The woman who handled 6 foster kids through trauma, night terrors, and court hearings. The woman who worked 3 jobs so Lucas could finish college without debt. That woman lived inside me still, even if Harper thought I was nothing but a stain on her luxury bridal plan. I set the tray down on the dining table because my arms no longer trusted themselves to hold it. I could not keep the tremor from my fingers, but I lifted my chin anyway. Harper glanced at my cookies and smirked. "Oh, please do not tell me you plan to bring those to the bridal shower. That is honestly pathetic." I did not answer. I could not. The words gathered in my throat but refused to move. My home, my quiet, humble sanctuary felt smaller, tighter, as if her cruelty squeezed the walls closer. But even in that shrinking space, I knew raising my voice would only feed the cruelty aimed at me. And yet, somewhere deep inside, beneath the hurt, something else began to stir. I did not know it then. But this moment, this humiliation, would become the spark that lit everything that followed. And as I looked at Harper, her flawless face twisted with arrogance, I understood one thing with absolute clarity. This was not the first time I had been hurt, but it would not be the last. And it would not be the worst. The worst was still coming. The moment my own son opened his mouth. I spent 18 years raising children who were not born from me but arrived from places that would have crushed most adults, and somehow that became the reason Harper Sloan and her family despised me. They never said it directly at first. They whispered, smiled tight, and let their judgment settle in the air around me. Their contempt began with my years as a foster mother. I never took in children for praise or attention. I did it because love was something I had to give, and the world never runs out of children who desperately need somewhere safe to land. Over nearly 2 decades, I opened my home to 6 kids, some bruised, some silent with trauma, some abandoned entirely. I was not wealthy, but I gave them warmth, safety, and a chance to breathe again. But to Harper, that history made me dirty. She once said behind my back, loud enough for me to hear through the thin kitchen wall, "A woman who spent her life raising foster kids cannot possibly belong in the Sloan family. The Sloans have standards. Standards. As if compassion stained me. As if love, offered freely, was a blemish." Harper grew up in a world where people only helped children when cameras were present, where charity was a performance and kindness was a tool for social currency. She could not understand foster care unless it came with a ribbon-cutting ceremony and a professional photographer waiting to catch her angles. And so she called my life's work a smudge on her perfect image. My car did not help her opinion of me either. I drive a 12-year-old Toyota, reliable as the sunrise but far from glamorous. The seats are worn, the buttons have lost their labels. The radio crackles sometimes. To me, it is a reminder of the years I worked extra shifts at the grocery store, at the diner, and at the local library circulation desk to buy it. To Harper, it was a symbol of lower class. I once heard her snicker to her mother, "Sarah drives that thing around town. People will think Lucas married into poverty." My house offended them too. The Sloans lived in granite and stainless steel, while mine was small and warm, filled with mismatched quilts, scribbles on baseboards I never erased, and dents left by teenagers who later cried apologies. My furniture came from thrift stores, my curtains from a second-hand sewing machine, but every corner held a story of love they could never understand. Harper once walked through my living room and whispered to her mother, "It is embarrassing. It looks like a retirement cabin for underpaid teachers." Her mother nodded, as if I were not standing right there. As if my home were something filthy. As if simple meant inferior. They despised my work ethic too. For years I carried 3 jobs at once. I worked mornings at a diner, afternoons at a library, and nights cleaning offices. It was exhausting, but it was what I had to do to make sure Lucas never felt the weight of financial insecurity the way I had as a child. I did not tell him about the nights I slept only 2 hours. I did not tell him about the meals I skipped so he could have full plates. Harper found out about my past jobs one evening when Lucas mentioned it casually. Her face twisted, and she said, "3 jobs? That is not admirable. It is desperate. That is the lifestyle of people who failed, not succeeded." She forgot, or perhaps she never knew, that some of us build our lives from the ground up without inheritance or comfort or guarantees. Some of us build quietly, with aching backs and tired eyes, and still manage to give our children more than we ever had. But the deepest cut she carried against me came from a single sentence I once spoke. The first time she came to my house, when she and Lucas announced their relationship, I asked her a simple question. "Do you love Lucas for who he is, or for what he has?" I meant no accusation. I had asked that question of every serious partner Lucas ever had. I needed to know if they valued him, not his potential. But Harper heard something else. She heard suspicion. She heard exposure. She heard danger. She held that sentence like a thorn she refused to pull out. She smiled at me that day, but I saw the flash in her eyes, the warning that I had crossed a line she drew around her pride. She never forgot it. She never forgave it. She feared that I saw through her carefully crafted image. To the Sloans, reputation is currency. Every dinner, every charity event, every smiling photo is a brick in their tower of prestige. I did not belong to their world. Not because of anything I did, but because I refused to worship the same shallow altars. In their eyes, My presence was a flaw in the family portrait, a crack in the marble facade. Harper once murmured while flipping through venue photos, "Sarah will lower the aesthetic," as if I were an accessory to be hidden because it did not match the outfit. But there was one reason, one raw, unspoken, irrational reason they hated me more than all the others. It was jealousy. Harper hated the closeness I once had with Lucas. She hated that he used to call me his hero. She hated that when he was little, he ran into my arms when he was scared, not hers. She hated that he grew up telling people, "My mother is the strongest woman I know." She could not stand the idea that there was a love in Lucas's life she could not replace or control. And no matter how much she tried, she knew she could never be the woman I had been for him. So Harper decided that to take Lucas fully, she had to erase me, not physically, but emotionally. She had to make me small, insignificant, unworthy. She had to convince him that my love was not pure, that my sacrifices were not real, that I had raised him for the sake of image, not for the love of a child who had nowhere else to go. In her world, if she could not be loved the most, then she would make sure I was loved the least. And that was how the quiet resentment became a storm that would one day tear all our lives apart. I did not understand it fully then, but Harper was already rewriting Lucas's world, one small cut at a time. Harper did not push me out of Lucas's life overnight. She did it slowly, with the quiet precision of someone who understands manipulation. At first, I mistook the distance for wedding stress or the natural shift of a man starting a new chapter. But it was her. It had always been her. During the engagement months, she held constant gatherings, brunches, fittings, tastings, photo shoots. Every week brought another curated event. I learned about them through neighbors or photos online. Smiling faces, raised glasses, perfect lighting. Lucas stood beside Harper and her family in every picture. I was never there, never invited, never mentioned. I remember the first time I saw one of those photos. It was a family meeting at an upscale restaurant. Lucas stood between Harper's parents, and Harper tagged it as "two families becoming one." But I was not in the photo, not even in the corner, not even invited to dinner. Someone commented beneath it, "Where is Lucas's mother?" Harper replied, "She could not make it." I sat alone at my kitchen table reading those words, staring at the lie she posted about me. I remembered that night clearly. I was sitting at home knitting a scarf for Lucas, completely unaware that they were clinking glasses and celebrating without me. It became a pattern. Harper organized everything and made sure I was never part of it. She arranged a cake tasting and brought her entire family but excluded me. She held a girls' afternoon tea where the theme was celebrating the women who raised us, yet still I was not invited. She edited me out of her narrative, like I was a stain that had to be scrubbed away. Harper had intentionally removed me from the portrait she was crafting for the world. It did not stop there. Slowly, Harper began pressuring Lucas too. She started with small comments about his schedule. "You work too much," she would say. Or, "We need to spend more time bonding with my family." But then, the tone changed. She told him, "You visit your mother too often. It makes you look immature." That word immature stuck in him like a thorn. I could tell because he used it himself a week later when he canceled lunch with me. "Mom, I need to build my own life. Harper says I should learn boundaries." I knew then that Harper was planting seeds in his mind. The visits went from once a week to once every other week, then once a month. Phone calls became shorter. Messages came less frequently. Sometimes I waited 2 or 3 days before hearing back from him. And when he did call, Harper's voice would echo behind him, urging him to wrap things up quickly. One night, I heard her whisper, not quietly enough, "Tell her you need to go. She makes everything heavy." He told me he had to leave. I said I understood. I always said I understood. And the words she used to describe me, those words, tore something inside me each time I heard them. She called me a burden. She called me an old woman who drained the energy of a room. She said I did not match their level, that I embarrassed them socially, that I was not fit to stand beside the Sloan family in public because I looked like a charity case. I remember the night Lucas repeated one of her lines without realizing it. He said, "Mom, maybe you should not come to every event. It just does not feel like your crowd." He said it softly, with hesitation, but the words were hers, the tone was hers, and I felt something inside me shrink. I tried to tell myself that I should be patient, that weddings often brought tension. But this was more than tension. It was erasure. With every exclusion, every lie, every manipulated moment, Harper tightened her grip on Lucas, and he drifted farther and farther from me. He stopped telling me about his life. He stopped asking about mine. He stopped looking at me with the warmth I once knew. Some nights, I sat alone on my couch, hands folded in my lap, wondering if motherhood could fade like a shadow. I whispered to myself once, as I stared at the empty living room, glowing under a single lamp. I have never been lonelier than I am now. Not even during the nights when the house was quiet and the children had finally fallen asleep, because loneliness from solitude is manageable. Loneliness from rejection is something else entirely. And nothing prepared me for how much worse it was going to get. Harper arrived without warning that afternoon, the sound of her heels hitting my wooden steps sharp enough to make my heart jump. When I opened the door, she was standing there with her mother, Vivian Sloane, both of them dressed as if they were heading to a gala rather than stepping into my modest home. Vivian barely offered a greeting, just swept her eyes across my living room with a stiff, judgmental tilt of her chin, the kind meant to make a person feel small without a single word spoken. Harper, arms crossed and brows raised, wasted no time announcing why they had come. "We need to approve what you plan on wearing to my bridal shower," she said, stepping past me before I could respond. Vivienne followed her inside, their perfume filling the room with an artificial sweetness that felt completely at odds with the chill they brought with them. For a moment, I simply stood there, unsure whether to laugh or to cry at the absurdity of being inspected like a schoolgirl preparing for her first dance. I forced myself to move. I went to my bedroom closet, hands trembling slightly as I selected 3 dresses that meant something to me. One was a soft blue dress I had worn to receive an award for foster parenting years ago, the memory of small hands gripping mine still clinging to the fabric in my mind. Another was a simple cream dress I had sewn myself, crooked stitches hidden along the hem but done with love. The third was a floral dress Lucas once said made me look soft, like springtime. I carried them out carefully and laid them across the back of my sofa. Harper took one glance and let out a laugh that cracked through the quiet of the house like a whip. "You cannot be serious," she said, lifting the floral dress with 2 fingers as if it were contaminated. "You plan to wear this? It looks like something picked out of a Goodwill bargain bin." My cheeks warmed with embarrassment, but I said nothing. Vivienne stepped closer, her lips curled into a polite smile that held no kindness. "We are trying to keep the bridal shower elegant," she said, "not turn it into a mountain town reunion for old ladies who knit by the fireplace." Harper nodded, pleased that her mother's cruelty aligned with her own. Then she looked directly at me, tilting her head as if studying an object she wanted to fix but deemed beyond repair. "Honestly, Sarah," she said, "none of these work. Actually, nothing you own will ever match the theme." I set my hands gently on the back of the chair beside me, both for balance and to calm the shaking that threatened to show. "I can find something else," I whispered. Harper waved the idea away with a flick of her wrist. "No, you do not need to. You know what is best. You should not come at all." Her voice sharpened. "You will only embarrass me. You always do." The words hit harder than they should have, harder than I was prepared for. But before I could recover, she delivered the final blow, the one that would echo long after she left my home. "It is better if you stay away. You make me uncomfortable. You make Lucas uncomfortable. And you make people wonder why he is marrying into your mess of a background." She paused, savoring the moment. "You make us look low." I felt something fragile crack inside my chest, but I still tried to steady myself. "Harper," I said quietly, "I never meant to make anyone uncomfortable. I just wanted to support." She cut me off. "Support? The best support you can give is staying invisible." Vivienne nodded approvingly, and for a moment, I wished the floor would open beneath me, just so I could escape the shame burning through my skin. But nothing could have prepared me for the words that came next. Lucas walked into the room. My heart lifted for a moment because I thought he would defend me. I thought he would tell Harper and Vivienne to stop. I thought he would remember the nights I stayed awake with him when he had nightmares as a child, the mornings I packed his lunches with little notes tucked inside, the winters we endured together in this house without enough heat but plenty of love. But instead, he looked at me with eyes that did not belong to the boy I raised. "Lucas," I said softly, pleading without meaning to. He took a breath, jaw tight, and then he said the sentence that split me open. "You are not my real mother." The room grew impossibly still. I felt every beat of my heart collide painfully against my ribs. "You picked me up," he continued, voice flat, "because you wanted to look like some charity angel. You used me. You used being a foster parent to make yourself seem noble. You used me to build your fake reputation." My vision blurred. I gripped the chair harder. "Lucas," I whispered, "that is not." But he took a step back from me, as if my presence was something toxic. "I do not want you at the bridal shower. You will ruin it. And honestly, Harper is right. You embarrass us." Embarrassing. Us. I did not recognize the man standing before me, the boy whose scraped knees I cleaned, whose fevers I soothed, whose future I worked myself raw to protect. Nothing of him felt familiar except the eyes life itself had given him. My breath thinned, my throat tightened, and heartbreak, not anger, shook me to my core. Harper slipped her arm through his, triumphant. Vivienne smiled, and I stood there holding the pieces of myself they had broken. None of them looked back as they left, not even Lucas. In that silence, I learned something. Pain like this does not fade, it forges you. That day became the root of my resolve. Albert Hayes came to my door 3 days after the dress-fitting humiliation, though he did not know anything about what had happened. He knocked gently, the way he always had. 3 soft taps that reminded me of the years he lived next door and brought leftover soup when I worked late shifts. When I opened the door, he studied my face for only a moment before sighing. "Something is wrong," he said. "You look like someone took a piece out of you." I smiled, because that was easier than explaining heartbreak. "Come in, Albert. The kettle is still warm." He followed me to the kitchen, sitting in his familiar chair. He watched me move slowly around the room, and finally he spoke. "I should have told you sooner. I did not know if it was my place, but now I think you need to hear this." I stopped stirring the tea. "Hear what?" Albert folded his hands, and I noticed the tremor in them. "It is about Harper." My body tensed at the sound of her name. "What about her?" "It is about the charity project she worked on a while back," he said carefully. "The one that raised money for foster kids." I blinked, caught by surprise. "I remember that. She used it to boost her social platform. She posted photos with banners, children's drawings, donation boxes." Albert nodded. "Except she never visited the children, not once." I turned slowly, the kettle humming softly behind me. "What do you mean?" "I was the volunteer treasurer for that project," he said, pulling a small folder from his jacket. "Harper was responsible for managing the funds and helping direct them to the care centers. But she did not. She redirected the money. Several $1,000s. My breath hitched. "Redirected?" "Into personal purchases," he said. "Designer bags, spa packages, expensive dinners. She used the charity's card, and then she used her family's influence to get the internal review dismissed." I stared at him, my fingers tightening around the edge of the counter. Every cruel word Harper had said to me replayed in my mind about class, about dignity, about being a stain on her perfect image. And yet here she was, someone who had stolen from children who had already lost everything. Albert pushed the folder toward me. "I kept these. I thought someone would eventually want to know the truth." Inside were email threads from Harper, written in a tone dripping with entitlement, complaining that the charity budget, limiting her lifestyle, was unfair. Another email showed her instructing a volunteer to pad the receipts so everything looks proper. Then there were the spreadsheets with missing funds, signature logs, and expense reports that tracked the trail of theft right to her shopping bags. And the photos, oh, the photos. Blurry shots taken by a staff member of Harper walking out of a boutique with 3 glossy bags, the charity debit card still in her hand. I felt something cold travel down my spine. Why tell me this now? Because I heard her talking in her driveway yesterday, Albert said quietly. She told someone she planned to separate Lucas from you completely after the wedding. She called you pathetic and said you were dragging her future down. A deep silence filled the room, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator and the faint whistle of the kettle that had now boiled dry. Albert leaned forward. Sarah, this woman does not just dislike you. She despises good people. She destroys what she cannot control. I saw what she did to the charity. I saw how easily she lied. And I see what she is doing to your son. I sat down across from him, the folder resting between us like a loaded weapon. I never wanted revenge, I whispered. I only ever wanted peace. A family, someone to love Lucas as I have loved him. Albert's eyes softened. Sometimes peace is not possible until the truth is allowed to breathe. Truth. The thing Harper feared most. I opened the folder again, studying every detail with the slow, methodical calm that only comes from the ache of betrayal. If this comes out, I murmured, it will tear apart everything Harper has built. Everything she stole, Albert corrected gently. I thought of the bridal shower, the wedding, the world she was crafting around Lucas, a world built on image, manipulation, and lies. A world where there was no room for a woman like me, someone who gave without expecting applause, someone who did the right thing quietly, someone she could not control. My hand settled on the final email, an admission almost. Harper complained about the constant pressure of pretending to be noble. Pretending. Exactly what she accused me of. Albert sat back. There is one more thing. You need someone strong, someone reputable, someone who will not be intimidated by the Sloan family. I looked up. Who? Miriam Douglas, he said. You remember her? My heart softened at the name. Miriam, the shy little girl who stayed with me for 7 months when she was 10. I remembered how she used to hide behind my skirt when strangers came near, and how she would whisper thank you each night before bed, even when she had nothing else to say. She is a journalist now, Albert continued. Award-winning, sharp as a blade. I felt something stir deep inside me. Do you think she would listen? Albert nodded. To you? Yes. Anything for you. That evening, I found Miriam's number tucked inside an old photo album. When she picked up, her voice matured but still warm. She sounded surprised to hear from me but delighted. I told her I needed to speak with her. I told her it involved children being taken advantage of. Her tone shifted instantly. Tell me where to meet you, she said. I will be there. We met at a small cafe near the edge of town. I handed her the folder. She read silently for 15 minutes, her expression tightening with each page. When she finished, she closed the file slowly, deliberately, like sealing a verdict. Then she looked at me with fierce conviction and said, "It is time the world sees who she really is." Her words felt like the rumble before a storm Harper never saw coming. At 9 on the morning of Harper's bridal shower, Colorado Springs felt unnaturally still, as if the whole town was holding its breath. I had no intention of attending. I had already been told, brutally, that I was not welcome, but I knew something was coming. Ever since I handed that folder to Miriam Douglas, the air around me felt charged, waiting. I sat by the kitchen window with a cup of tea, listening to the house settle in its familiar creaks, the calm before a storm. Then, right at 9, my phone buzzed. Once, twice, then non-stop notifications pouring in so quickly the screen stuttered. The first message was a link, from Miriam. The headline flashed across the screen in bold, unforgiving letters. Bridal influencer Harper Sloan under investigation for embezzling funds from foster children's charity. Not a whisper, not a rumor, a headline. The article spread instantly across social media, local news, community forums, even the regional homepage. Miriam delivered everything she promised. Verified numbers, authenticated screenshots, time-stamped photos. Every detail was laid out with surgical precision. There was no escape, no spin left. Within minutes, furious comments flooded in. Disgusting. How could anyone steal from foster kids? I always knew she was fake. This is unforgivable. Arrest her. The name Sloan, once spoken with admiration, was suddenly drenched in outrage. Messages surged like a storm. Charity donations paused, then frozen, then reversed. Sponsors withdrew. Boutiques and cafes publicly condemned Harper. Even a tiny flower shop refused to support exploitation. Within 30 minutes, Harper's Instagram turned into a battlefield. Thousands unfollowed. Others demanded answers. Some tagged the police. Former collaborators posted vague statements about misaligned values. The collapse was fast, merciless, complete. Then the police department released its official statement. The Colorado Springs Police Department has initiated a formal review of the financial records related to the Foster Bridge charity project. Evidence suggests possible misappropriation of funds. Individuals involved will be contacted for questioning. I read those words twice, letting them settle into my bones. This was not gossip. This was not revenge. This was justice, the kind of justice that arrives slowly, quietly, steadily, and then all at once. My phone rang. It was Albert. "Turn on the local news," he said. "You need to see this." I switched on the television. A reporter stood in front of the Sloan family home, microphone in hand, the wind lifting her hair. Behind her, police cars were parked at the curb. The reporter spoke with practiced calm, but the underlying tension was unmistakable. At this hour, investigators have arrived at the residence of the Sloan family. While no official charges have been made, sources indicate that evidence collected from the charity's financial records raises significant concerns. Neighbors gathered across the street, whispering to one another with wide eyes. Cameras flashed. A drone hovered overhead. The Sloan house, once a symbol of perfect social standing, now looked like a stage where the facade had finally cracked. Harper had not stepped outside yet. She was still inside, unaware of the full weight of what awaited her, unaware that the world outside her door had shifted dramatically in a matter of minutes. Her bridal shower brunch was scheduled to begin at 10. By 9:30, half the guests had already canceled, citing personal reasons, though anyone following the news knew exactly why. I leaned back in my chair, hands around my mug, feeling no joy, only a deep, steady stillness, the kind that comes after bleeding stops but before healing begins. This was never revenge. It was truth, stepping out of the shadows, letting the world finally see what I had always seen. Harper spent years building a tower of mirrors. That morning, a single headline shattered everyone. She did not know it yet, but the real storm, the one waiting at her venue, had only just begun. Harper arrived at the bridal shower venue expecting cameras, flowers, and praise, but instead found a locked glass door staring back at her. She yanked the handle, confused, then pressed her hands to the glass. Inside, no decor, no tables, no flowers, no staff, just darkness, as if the event had never existed. Her heels echoed as she circled the building, pulling at every door, calling for anyone to fix what she assumed was a small mistake. But the venue was empty. Even the parking lot held only her car. Then her phone buzzed once, twice, then nonstop. Vendors canceling one after another, the florist refusing, the caterer withdrawing, the bakery rejecting her, the DJ condemning her. Her breaths grew frantic. She trembled as she returned to the front of the building, and that was when she saw me stepping out of Albert's car. She pointed at me, voice cracking into a shrill scream. "You did this. You did this to me. You canceled everything. You ruined my bridal shower. Did you call them? Did you threaten them? Did you go behind my back?" Her panic twisted into hatred. "You ruined everything?" she screamed so loudly the words echoed across the empty lot. Her voice was feral, wild, the sound of someone watching their perfect world crumble piece by piece. I let the silence settle before I answered. I did not raise my voice. I did not match her rage. I looked her directly in the eyes and said the truth she had always feared. "No, Harper," I said. "The truth did that." She blinked, stunned. The words hit her harder than any accusation. She shook her head violently, refusing to accept reality. "This is your fault. You exposed something that was none of your business. You had no right." I held her gaze. "You stole from children. That was everyone's business." Her face crumpled with a mixture of terror and disbelief, as if morality were a language she had forgotten how to understand. Before she could unleash another scream, a silver sedan sped into the lot and parked crookedly. Vivian Sloane stepped out. Her hair was immaculate, but her composure was not. She marched toward us on stiff legs, her expression stretched tight across her face. "Harper," she snapped, "why is everything locked? Where is the staff? Why are there reporters outside our home? Explain yourself right now." Harper's voice cracked as she rushed toward her mother. "Mom, it is all lies. She did this. Sarah did this. She ruined everything. She turned the whole town against me." Vivian's eyes slid toward me for a moment, sharp, accusing, but when she looked back at her daughter, something changed. "What exactly did she ruin, Harper?" Harper hesitated. That hesitation was fatal. Vivian stepped closer. "Tell me you did not actually take that money." Harper flinched. That was all it took. Vivian's breath left her in a shaky exhale. "Harper, what have you done?" Harper grabbed her mother's arm. "Mom, nobody will care. We can fix this. Just call your lawyer. Call Dad. Call the committee." But Vivian wrenched her arm free. "Do not drag me into this," she hissed. "You have humiliated this family beyond repair." Behind her, a second car pulled in. A third. Family members stepped out cautiously, phones in hand, eyes filled with embarrassment and disbelief. Whispers floated across the parking lot like shards of broken glass. She really did it? Stealing from foster kids? How disgusting. She has destroyed the Sloane reputation. One of her uncles shook his head and muttered, "She will never live this down." Then a black SUV pulled up. Harper's father stepped out, shoulders stiff, jaw clenched so tightly that the muscles in his face twitched. He looked at Harper with an expression so cold it froze her where she stood. Daddy, listen, please." He held up his hand. "Do not call me that," Harper wilted. He stepped closer and said the words that would haunt her far more than anything I could have said. "You are not worthy of being part of this family, and you will not be married into ours. You have disgraced the Sloane name." Harper staggered backward as if struck. "Dad, please, you cannot. Lucas loves me. I can fix this. Just give me a chance." But her father had already turned away from her. One crack in the Sloane foundation became a collapse, and then the last blow came. Lucas's car pulled into the lot. He stepped out slowly, looking hollow, as if the ground beneath him had been pulled away. He held his phone in his hand. The article was still open. He walked toward us in a painful silence. Harper rushed to him. "Lucas, baby, listen. None of this is true. She set me up, your mother. She did this." But Lucas did not reach for her. He did not touch her. He did not say her name. He walked past her like she was nothing more than the echo of a bad decision. He stopped in front of me, his voice cracking as he whispered, "Mom." And just like that, the weight inside him broke. His face twisted as tears slipped down his cheeks. "Mom, I am so sorry." Something inside him broke his certainty, his pride, the illusion Harper had built around him. Then he dropped to his knees. Right there, in the empty parking lot where Harper's empire had collapsed, my son knelt in front of me like a child who had finally found the truth he had forgotten. "Mom, I said horrible things to you. I believed lies. I let her turn me against you. I do not know how I could have done that." I placed a trembling hand on his shoulder. "Lucas," I whispered, "look at me." He lifted his face, eyes red, desperate. And I said the words that had lived in my heart since the day he wounded me more deeply than anyone else ever had. "You hurt me not because of what you said, but because of what you stayed silent about." His face collapsed into his hands as a sob escaped him. Behind him, Harper watched the scene unfold, her fiancé kneeling before the woman she tried to erase from his life, and for the first time, she understood that this was not just the collapse of an event. It was the collapse of everything: her reputation, her engagement, her influence, her future, her power. All of it shattered in the span of a morning. And I stood there, steady in the storm she had created, watching the truth do what I never needed to raise my voice to accomplish. When everything finally collapsed, the town spoke Harper Sloane's name with disgust. The woman who once lived for cameras now hid indoors. Sponsors cut ties, collaborators unfollowed her, vendors blacklisted her. A single attempted apology video was drowned in outrage before she deleted every account she owned. The polished identity she built crumbled overnight, and the truth stayed standing. Her engagement to Lucas ended just as quickly. She begged, threatened, blamed jealous people, blamed me, blamed everyone but herself. But Lucas had seen the evidence. He knew the truth. When he finally ended it, Harper's screams echoed down the street. She left town soon after, luggage full of designer labels and not a shred of dignity. Vivienne's downfall followed. The Women's League expelled her. Her invitations vanished. Even her own relatives avoided her. The social pedestal she worshipped cracked beneath her daughter's scandal, leaving her stranded in the shadows she once pushed others into. Lucas, humbled and ashamed, came back to me. He moved 5 minutes away, not out of need, but loyalty. He shared dinner with me every week, sometimes more. Some evenings he cried from guilt, but I reminded him, healing is a choice, like forgiveness, like love. One morning, Lucas showed up with a bouquet of wildflowers he picked himself, not bought. He placed them on my table and said, "Mom, I will spend the rest of my life proving I am worthy of you." And for the first time since the storm began, I believed him. But the brightest part of what followed came later, months later, on a warm evening when the State Foster Care Coalition held its annual ceremony. They invited me as an honoree, though I did not yet understand the scale of what they planned. When I arrived, the auditorium was full. Lights glowed softly. People I had not seen in decades lined the seats. And then, one by one, the children I had raised stepped onto the stage, grown now. Some with families of their own, some with careers I would have never imagined when they were little and scared and hurting under my roof. They hugged me, each one, long, trembling embraces that brought tears to my eyes. One said, "You were the first person who ever cooked a meal just for me." Another whispered, "You saved me." A third slipped a note into my hand, "You taught me I mattered." And then Miriam Douglas walked up to the microphone. Her voice was steady, warmed by emotion and purpose. She spoke about the case she published, the one that exposed Harper. She spoke about corruption, justice, and truth. But then she shifted. She spoke about me, about the nights I sat beside her bed when she had night terrors, about the shoes I bought her when her only pair broke, about the way I told her she deserved kindness even when she did not believe it. "People like Sarah May Hollinger," Miriam said, "do not climb social ladders. They build bridges. They change lives quietly, consistently, without applause. And tonight, we are here to applaud what she never sought praise for: a lifetime of real love." The room stood, every person. Applause thundered through the hall in a way I had never experienced. My knees trembled. My heart felt too full for its own ribs. At the end of the night, they asked if I wanted to say a few words. I walked to the microphone slowly, my hands soft against its edges, and looked out at the faces that had shaped my life in ways I had never expected. "They told me I was not refined enough to show up," I said. "That I was not the right class, not the right image. But character has a class of its own. And mine," I paused, letting my eyes sweep across the crowd, "has never stood beneath theirs." And as the applause rose again, I felt the truth settle quietly inside me. Some people build their lives on appearances. I built mine on love. And love, in the end, is the only thing that never collapses. If this story touched you, moved you, or reminded you that strength often whispers instead of shouts, then I hope you will stay with me a little longer. There are more memories tucked inside this old heart, stories of betrayal, redemption, quiet justice, and the kind of love that refuses to die. So before you go, make sure to subscribe to Grandma True Stories. Your support keeps these stories alive. And it reminds the world of something I learned a long time ago. When a grandmother finally speaks, the truth echoes farther than anyone expects.